The past is more than what we leave behind. We celebrate our triumphs and bury our regrets. Every age has its secrets. In each layer of history, we can rediscover hope. A way to chart our future. Countless stories are carved into the Earth's strata. The lessons of one age augur the next. We must learn from our past. The future is waiting.
Hey Civ fans, it's Sarah, your CM here. Thanks so much for joining us today for this live stream. We have shown you antiquity, we've shown you exploration, and now we are super stoked to show you the modern age today. We've got two new first looks to show you, one for Benjamin Franklin and one for a surprise leader we're really excited to show off. And we're also going to be diving into some modern age mechanics as well. And to speak to it all, I'm joined by Ed Beach, our creative director. Ed, in a couple words, how are you feeling about the modern age?
This is, I was really excited for the exploration age save, but this is another level. This is the end of our story. We have a 3-chapter story that we've been telling. This is where it all comes to a big conclusion. And you said we have a few mechanics to show. We have a lot of mechanics to show. The modern age is packed with content, packed with new systems. So I hope everyone's ready for quite a few explanations and some deep dives into things over the next couple hours.
We have 2 hours to do it, and we will try to get through as much as we can. I'm also joined by Carl Berrien Harrison, our lead designer. He joins us yet again from paternity leave. So Carl, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
On a scale, using Civ difficulties, how are you feeling about parenthood?
I'm going to put it at an immortal, not quite deity. There are certainly deity level hard days, but there's a lot of ones that are much nicer. Just this morning as I was coming in for this stream, my son was smiling at me and giving me all kinds of cute looks. So, days like that are particularly special.
Nice. Well, from us at Firaxis, and obviously a lot of our players do, we just say congratulations to you. Don't forget, you have another opportunity today to earn that Twitch drop. So all you have to do is watch for 15 minutes and be sure to link your 2K account as well. This will give you an exclusive Exploration Age banner, which is really cool to use in the game. You can use it in places like the multiplayer lobby or the load screen. And just as a reminder, Civ 7 will not come with microtransactions nor loot boxes. These are just really cool ways to customize your profile. And you could use this new banner when Civ 7 launches on February 11th, 2025, which is right around the corner. You can even play it earlier if you pre-order February 6. And remember that we're coming out day and date for PC and console. That's cross-play and cross-save day 1 too, which is really, really incredible. And the last plugin, and we just showed the collector's edition items. So for those Civ fans that really like the physical merch, that's a really cool edition to check out. So definitely do so. So what to expect from this live stream? We talked about it a little bit. We're going to be showing off some first looks. We're going to be showing off some modern age mechanics. Ed, what are some of maybe those mechanics that we might see on the stream?
So remember that in each of our ages we have legacy paths, which are how you build up your reputation in various parts of the game, whether it's science or culture or military or economics. We'll be showing you what those are like in the military, in the modern age. We're also going to show how the game ends. So the legacy paths have been sort of how you score points as you go through the game up until now, but that's not the way we want a proper Civ game to end, so we'll be explaining that, and we'll go into what a victory is all about as well. Just in terms of mechanics, there's, I know fans out there who are really excited for us to show off railroads. We'll get to those. We'll show how the Industrial Revolution works, and we'll get into all the crazy additions to combat in terms of air power and what that looks like.
Nice. And while we show you all of that awesome stuff, you can feel free to leave some questions in chat for the devs. We will do our best throughout all this gameplay to tackle what we can. But without further ado, why don't we start off with that first look for that surprise leader I mentioned?
I never lost a passenger. Never crashed my train. Well, not many can say the same.
Born Araminta Ross to enslaved parents in Maryland, Harriet Tubman escaped from slavery and dedicated her life to saving countless others via the Underground Railroad. Facing difficult odds, Tubman quickly moved enslaved peoples through a network of safe houses and across treacherous terrain to reach freedom. Harriet Tubman excels at operating in secret, which makes her an excellent spy master. And if war becomes inevitable, she has the resilience to persevere. In the modern age, consider pairing Harriet Tubman with America, whose production bonuses will help you build toward a better future. Or choose a different path, all your own. But whatever you build, remember to build something you believe in.
That was our first look for Harriet Tubman. Ed, can you tell us a little bit about why Harriet Tubman for Civ 7?
Harriet Tubman is a leader choice that's sort of near and dear to our heart at Firaxis Games. Firaxis is based in Maryland, and if you look at historical figures from the state of Maryland, Harriet Tubman's right at the top of the list. So she was born on the eastern shore of Maryland across the Chesapeake Bay from Baltimore and Annapolis. And over on the eastern shore, there was a lot of slaveholding plantations. She was born on one of those in an enslaved status. It wasn't until she reached somewhere between 25 and 30 that she was able to figure out a way. She was about to be sold off to another family. She didn't want to go through that. She escaped. She made it to Pennsylvania. It was a dramatic moment in her life. She was actually across that state line and in Union territory and safe from enslavement. And she made the decision that she was going to go back home. She went back home 13 times to pull more of her family members out, get them to freedom into the North. So she's a local hero for us. She's a local hero for the whole state of Maryland. And we can bring some interesting, brand new type of gameplay through this type of leader that we maybe wouldn't have had with a political leader. So just like Machiavelli and Confucius and some of the other leaders that we've shown, she's a great representation of how not having those political head of states gives us a chance to go in a really interesting direction.
That's awesome. Yeah, we are so excited, I think, to represent Harriet in this game and also to show off her really cool abilities as well. And I know we've talked just on the subject of leaders. We are close to launch at this point. We have revealed the full number of civs, I think at a previous panel, as 31 civs, which is the most civs to ever come at launch with a civ game, which is awesome. I don't think that we have yet revealed the number for leaders, so why don't we talk numbers right now? Like I said, at launch, 31 civs, and our leader count will be 26 at launch, including 5 personas, which I think at one point we had mentioned that this was the most leaders as well for a Civ game. Some of our eagle-eyed Civ historians were pointing out that this makes us tied with Civ 4's roster at launch, which also very impressive roster for Civ 4. But I know that we're really proud of the leaders that we put in this game and the depth that I think we're able to go into with each of them, including the personas as well. So we're super excited to show those off. Why don't we go ahead and let's load up some gameplay as well.
Sounds good.
So Carl's going to be driving today, but this is actually a game that I started playing. I was aware that we were going to do a couple different saves that we were going to show today, so I wanted to go ahead and help us out by getting a Harriet Tubman game set up. And I had to choose my pathway through history like you always do in Civ 7. And I was trying to think about how would Harriet Tubman make sense evolving towards an American Civ, because we knew we wanted to end with showing American gameplay. And she's a leader that automatically unlocks America. So I thought about her heritage and where she had come from. Her grandmother had been one of those enslaved people who was transported from West Africa to the United States. And so I thought, well, maybe I can somehow represent her West African heritage somehow with my gameplay in this game. So I thought, well, that's probably the Songhai Empire in exploration. Songhai get great bonuses from Navigable River. They pair really well with Egypt. So I started with Egypt. My capital was Waset, up in the top of the map that Carl's showing you, on this really cool lake with a Navigable River that's spilled out to the sea. But let me point out, this was actually not the first time I started a game as Egypt and Harriet Tubman. I actually was pretty confident I could go on Immortal difficulty, get a game up and going. It would proceed without a problem, without a hitch, and we'd get right to the live screen. That was not the case. I went into that game, saw some great navigable rivers, sent my settlers out there. Immediately, those spots were contested by the AIs nearby. I had multiple AIs going for those rivers. I did not get there. I got smacked back, and I actually had to restart. So this is Ed's game number 2.
This is the better timeline.
Yes,
right
this
now.
is a way better timeline. I actually had such a nice setup with these multiple navigable rivers that I was in such a strong place by the end of Antiquity that I actually had 3 different opponents declare war on me within the first 10 turns of exploration. Wow. And so, Carl, why don't you show us what one of Harriet Tubman's abilities is that really helped me out during that time period?
Sounds good. So Harriet Tubman's ability is called Combahi Raid. She gets extra influence towards espionage actions and then additional war support on wars declared against her. War support is how you impose war weariness penalties on other players. And so getting 5 free war support is a huge bonus when other people declare war on you.
And then the last bit, units ignore movement penalties from vegetation. Yeah, that's really useful all the time, whether it's you're moving your military units. I thought that was going to help me get out there and get those navigable rivers claimed with my early settling, but it wasn't to be in the first game. It was only in the second game where I managed to achieve that. So now we're in the third age. So I've been talking about sort of the game as it evolved through those first 2 ages. We'll get more into exactly what happened with the Songhai. But we are on turn 1 of the modern age, and so just like we showed in the exploration age live stream about how exploration starts and you have legacies that you've established from your gameplay in the first 2 ages, We have legacies here, and Carl's going to walk us through some of our choices.
Yep, so we are here choosing our legacy options from the points that you had earned, and we can see that you have 3 economic points and 3 science points, which are the most that you can earn in those categories, which means you completed those legacy paths. You have 0 points in cultural, though, Ed, which means that you didn't make any progress there.
Ed said no to culture.
I actually said no to religion pretty much for that. You know, I'm a big religion player, but not in this game. I was very focused on the Treasure Fleet gameplay and using Songhai's unique ability to get treasure fleets from navigable river cities. That was a big boon towards. Without having a huge overseas empire,
Sure.
I was still able to finish that economic path.
Sure, and then even speaking of religion, we can see that there are some religious symbols on our cities here in the background, so it is still around here in the modern age. But because you got no progress in the cultural legacy path, you did hit a cultural dark age. So we have this option available to us, cultural dark age, which all dark age options give you a huge boost to that type, victory type, or excuse me, legacy path type in the next age at some kind of penalty. The other penalty that comes with them is that they consume all of your other points. So if we were to select this, we can see that it zeroes out all of our points here. They're all spent on this option. That's a big switch from picking lots of small individual bonuses to this really big chunky thing that might really revolutionize our gameplay. We are not going to pick this today. We just wanted to show that. Instead, we're going to keep those points and we're going to start assigning them out to the different options that we have here. So we're going to get some attribute points. You did get the Treasure Fleet Golden Age because you completed that path. I don't want that one there. We're going to go with resources and an economic point. And that's because you can only pick one Golden Age option. You got the economic one and the science one. The science one lets your universities stay active and relevant in this new age, which would give us not 2, but 3 active science buildings, which is huge. So we're going to go ahead and pick that. And then we want to move our capital. And you talked about that you started founding some cities over in the New World. Timbuktu is one that you've put out in the ocean, makes a really good midway point. So we're going to choose Timbuktu as our new capital, and that will upgrade to Washington, D.C.
So remember those words that Carl just went over there, artifacts and explorers. They're going to come up in just a moment when we talk about the cultural legacy path in modern. I was actually able to do well in the science victory in the previous age, which is the Enlightenment legacy path, because you can see I had a lot of Egyptian wonders in both my main cities. Also great adjacency bonuses from some of those navigable river and coastal tiles. And so that's how you win Enlightenment, is very, very powerful individual urban tiles with large adjacency bonuses, and that worked out very nicely for me.
Oh, so you can see Washington, D.C. over there.
Yes, the former Timbuktu. It has now rebranded itself.
So we're ready to start making some choices here at the start of the new age. So let's go ahead and dive into our tech tree. And as we can see our tech tree here, this is a lot of really great modern age tech. So Ed, why don't you tell us a little bit about modern age?
Okay, so if you looked very closely at our screen before, you could see that the modern age starts in the year 1750. So that's just at the point in time where monarchies are starting to be really challenged and crumbling under the pressure of maybe the French Revolution or the American Revolution. We're really evolving towards the modern nation state with big, large national armies. Sort of the time of Napoleon is just about upon us. And so we're going to start there early in the 19th century and move towards the back half of the 19th century where we have the Industrial Revolution kicking in. So you can see at the bottom of our tech tree, we have industrialization, above that combustion, above that urbanization. These are all the sort of later 19th century technologies that are really going to change the way commerce happens, what we're going to be doing with our resources. We'll see that very soon. And things like factories and railroads are going to become crucially important. But there's a lot more to the modern age after that. This is just a chock full of content age. We have to proceed through the world wars. We have to get to flight. We have to turn the early flight experiments into aircraft. They're going to be used for military purposes. Eventually we get to rocketry. All that's within this age. We love to have our ages with a big climactic conflict between the players where they're really fighting it out. The modern age with the world wars really fits that bill very nicely. So That's what we decided. We decided we have so much content. This is the fullest age we have. It's already set up sort of perfectly in terms of the way the history lays out. And we're just going to say that's our third age. That's perfect for the end of a civilization game. Now, there's some content after that that players are familiar with. The Cold War kicks in, you know, and obviously history has marched on to the present. That's not something you're going to see in Civ 7 at launch, but we'll be talking about the plans for how that gets into the game when it's the right time.
Lots of room to grow, for sure. And we do only have 2 hours, but I'm really excited to show off some of those techs that you talked about, like railroads and factories as well.
Absolutely. But first, we have some additional choices to make here, and I think we're ready to choose our Civic. So if we open our Civics tree, we're able to see what that looks like for the modern age.
A couple of these are critical. So natural history is the Civic that lets you launch into exploring your past, gets you the Explorer unit, who is our unit that's involved with the archaeology system. Similar to Civ 5 and 6, which had archaeology systems, we have one here. It also takes note of where things occurred in previous ages, and there's a recording of that that's going on in the background, and that information is being dug back up here sort of by the game to present things for players. But you have to research natural history to get into that legacy path. And what natural history does is it lets you build the Explorer unit and then send those explorers to either universities that were created during the Exploration Age or museums that you may have created here in the modern age. And those are places where the knowledge of those ancient antiquity civilizations and the Exploration Age conflicts, all that is sort of stored in those universities and museums. And that's a place where an explorer can go and figure out where are the right places to dig to get artifacts to help towards this cultural legacy path are. So,
and then you can also receive them in a few other ways. We just placed one of our new buildings, a grocer, down up here on this floodplains, and that gives us a new narrative event, which if we open up, we can see is talking about discovering an archaeological treasure. And if we look over at that choice, it says the story continues. We don't get told what we will receive if we select this. It tells us exactly. It tells us later on there will be an additional bit of story that comes up from this, and that will come with its own choice. Or we can just go ahead and opt out and get a lot of happiness right now. I think we'll go ahead and select to get this archaeological treasure in the future.
Our narrative director, Kat, she put together a really incredible dev diary on this system too, so definitely encourage everybody to go check that out.
And then looks like we've got some resource assignments available.
So let's talk about resources in this age. Resources have always been divided into 3 categories: bonus, city, and empire. We talked about those in the antiquity stream. We won't talk about them here because they function the same way. In the exploration age, we had a special type of resource called the treasure resources. We do not have treasure resources here. Instead, we have another new category, what we call factory resources. Factory resources are one that are going to be especially useful once we hit the Industrial Revolution and we bring factories online and we want to produce manufactured goods out of those factories. The way that works is your cities with your factories have resource slots. Just like Carl's showing here, he's filling his resource slots with the city and bonus resources. But once a factory's online, we can take those same slots and fill them with one of these factory goods. And each factory good has a unique bonus that applies empire-wide. The more goods you can pump into that factory, the more times those bonuses will stack up for you. So some very powerful effects you can get out of that, and that's also going to help towards one of the legacy paths that we're going to see real soon.
Let's go ahead and take a look at it now.
Okay. So the Age Progress screen is set up the same way as it was before with the 4 different legacy paths. The first one we're going to talk about is this Railroad Tycoon path that is about getting the proper factory resources into those towns with factories and applying the manufacturing process to them. So it looks like, oh my goodness, there are a lot of little subdivisions on this legacy path. Some of these legacy paths before only showed like 7 divisions, and this one has just hundreds of them. And that's because of the way this particular legacy path is scored. So if I have 5 resources, so for instance, we were looking at cotton as one of our factory resources. If I have 5 cotton and I put them in a city with a factory that has 5 resource slots, What that's going to do is it's going to give me the cotton bonus 5 times over, but each turn that sits there in place, I'll get 5 points towards this victory. So imagine you have 5 cities set up like that, and factories can be in towns as well. So you can actually, it's not inconceivable to have 8 to 10 factories going at once.
As long as they're connected by rail.
Right.
Right.
All has to be connected by rail, or you can get islands connected if you have set up ports. The right way. But no matter what, all those factories, if they're connected in, they're scoring you points towards this victory each turn, so that the 500 points you need is not as crazy as it sounds. So one thing you'll see on these screens is the far right lower corner. There's now a big victory symbol there and some details there. We'll be going into exactly what those mean later, but keep in mind that in the previous ages, you were trying to get to the right-hand edge of a legacy path to earn those Golden Age cards we were talking about. Now, getting to the end of a legacy path unlocks a victory for you.
Right.
All right, so let's look at the culture path. We've alluded to that quite a bit with the talk about the explorer and how the first thing you have to do is study natural history and then train one of him and to have one of your explorers. That person should go out and research where the artifacts are and then go out to the sites. Artifacts are housed in museums that can be built once you research natural history, and once you get to 15 of those, then you finish that legacy path.
I do have a quick question from chat. Puri710 asks, in these presentations, a lot of real-world conflicts are referred to as if they're canon. Are we going to be going through guaranteed conflicts based on history?
So the way the game is set up is no different than any previous Civ game is. There's no scripting of the events or the conflicts. It's all the dynamic interrelation of the leaders, the friction caused by our diplomatic system. We've shown off the diplomatic system before. We'll show it off again here, where we're talking about like what the relationship scores are. There are some things we do to sort of nudge the game towards those conflicts, and that's not any different than how ideologies were portrayed in Civ 5 or Civ 6, where if I chose to be a Democrat and someone else chose to be communist or fascism, that ideological friction just caused us naturally to dislike each other, and eventually your AI opponents are going to go to war over that. There's another incentive to go to war here on the military legacy path, and we'll get to that soon.
Got it. So it looks like we're heading toward an independent power. Carl, what's going on screen?
So over here, this is the distant lands, and there's a lot of mostly open territory, but at the end of the very first turn, you have independent powers spawn into the map. And so while this looked wide open for us to settle, it did get a bunch of independent powers here. America really likes to expand into this kind of open territory and claim lots of resources. They get gold every time they improve a resource. So this is really juicy for us as America, and we really want to go and take as much of that as possible. Here we have the beautiful Grand Canyon natural wonder, so we're going to go try to settle that. But in order to settle it, we first have to clear out the independent powers, so I'm moving an army commander into that area to start that process. I also went ahead and purchased a prospector, which is America's unique civilian unit. The prospector can go outside of the normal radius of a city, which is 3 tiles. It can go to 4 or even 5 tiles away to improve land resources, acquiring them as part of that city, placing an improvement there, and giving you that resource. And that still gives you the free gold for America's ability.
That
Plus,
seems powerful.
Harriet Tubman's prospectors can move over vegetated terrain.
Which we'll see here in just a second, because this tile is vegetated and normally would stop our movement, and we're going to be able to go right through it. So we got a celebration here, so we're going to go ahead and pick that effect. I chose authoritarianism as our government, so we can do either military unit production or combat strength. And because we're about to start fighting this independent power, I'm going to pick combat strength.
That makes sense.
And that also gives us a policy slot, so we'll go ahead and slot in a new policy here.
While you pick this, another quick question from chat. Van Harian asks, will AI be able to trigger the advance to the next stage?
So all players sort of combine together to move the game towards the next stage. The 2% progress we're seeing here, obviously we're just at the very dawn of the modern age, but each turn that progress ticks up, but also anytime one of those milestones, one of those big achievement bars on one of the legacy paths is encountered by any player for the first time, that provides a major boost to the age progress, and that can be triggered by either the AI opponents or by the human players. So if you're sitting around not doing anything and you're letting the AI...
The game will keep going.
Yeah, yeah. History will leave you behind.
Right, right. Seeing the animations up close is so cool.
And once again, that combat continues to play out over the rest of the turn.
Not doing extra damage over and over again, but
No,
the animation,
just the
is
animation
playing,
continues.
yes.
So we do have another diplomatic action to respond to, so we'll go ahead and resolve that. So whenever any diplomatic action comes up, we have the three options: support, accept, or reject. Supporting or rejecting always costs influence, and this happens for pretty much any diplomatic action that occurs. We released a short on the diplomacy system yesterday. If you haven't seen it, make sure to check that out. So this is an endeavor, so it's positive for me, but if it were a sanction, let's say, which is negative for me, I would still have the option to reject that sanction, which costs me influence, so there's an opportunity cost there, but I do have options in how I want to interact with this. I'm going to go ahead and pick accept, which is free, because I want to save our influence for doing some espionage as Harriet Tubman. She gets plus 100% influence towards espionage actions, and we're going to go ahead and take an espionage action against Xerxes, who we are
Not friendly with.
Not friendly with. So here we can see all of the options available to us. There's all of these endeavors and sanctions. We can try to make improve our relationship with him, for example. But by doing espionage, this is a hidden option. All these others, the leader will get to see what we're doing, and so will every other leader in the game. But espionage is secret. There is a reveal chance, so if we were revealed while doing this action, the leader would get a bunch of grievances against us and a lot of free influence that they could then use on their own actions of any type. But we get to have these at a much cheaper cost. You can see these are 40 and 80, whereas the other types are much, much more expensive if we were to try to do those.
That's all due to Tubman's unique
That's
ability,
because of
right?
Tubman's unique ability, yeah.
She's basically got half cost in this whole section of the
Exactly,
display.
yeah. So we're going to go ahead and steal technological advancement. He'll have no idea that we're doing this unless we get revealed, and he has no recourse. Like I said, with endeavors and sanctions, you can choose to reject it. This just happens.
He could set up a counter spy.
Unless he sets up a counter spy, and counter spying will increase the time it takes to resolve an espionage action and increase that reveal chance.
So we have a 100% chance.
We have 100%. So this is going to happen no matter what. It's just whether or not he discovers it and then gets bonuses to himself as a result.
And it can be delayed if he counter spies it.
Yes.
So we may not be able to play the full 10 turns to see what comes out of this.
Right.
But what were to happen were we to be successful?
So in the case of Steel Technology, we would get a free technology out of that. I believe it's the cheapest one that he has discovered that we have not. It did say on the tooltip there, I didn't read the whole thing. But for those who will go back
Carl,
and screenshot
would you
it.
save any of your influence for the other two city-states here, playing this out, or?
I think that as America, we would just take over all of these. We have lots of available settlement limit. You start at 16 at the beginning of Modern. So we have tons of available settlements that we can create. If we take over all these independent powers and then send out settlers, we'll get lots of...
I would play it differently. I would keep at least one of them.
You keep one?
I think probably, I mean, there are 4 of them here. I think one of them is worth it just to get the suzerain bonus from the city-states. We might want to strategically pick, these all look like militaristic ones,
They
aren't
are
they?
all military ones.
So it doesn't matter which one we keep it alive. But some of the bonuses are very, very strong, and just to remind people, we've shown what city-state bonuses look like in previous ages, but here in the modern age, they're even more powerful and effective than in any of the previous ages, so there's something you definitely don't want to discount.
I think it can be a real race with other players, right? To see who can get to the city-states first, too. So we're ranking up a commander.
Yep, we just unlocked a promotion.
I have a question, another question from chat. Can you speed up how long spies take to complete one of the actions?
Not sure there are any abilities I'm aware of that do that. So I think it's pretty much, it's shown there, and yeah, it's.
Perhaps the game settings would be the
Well,
answer.
they absolutely do change based on game speed for sure. But we have fertile ground for all sorts of bonuses to be applied to all sorts of civilizations as the content starts rolling out for this game. So. I'm sure our content team's paying attention right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We get some good
you may
ideas
see
from our community.
exactly. You may see ideas like that creeping in very soon.
So our prospector is ready. You can see that this silk tile is outside of our normal 3-tile range, but if we improve it with the prospector, we still gain that resource. It is now added to our resource pool. We can assign it, and we got 100 gold for doing so.
And that's an important resource right now because that's going to speed up our culture production, which is going to get us to natural history before those other players. If
Absolutely.
we're having to go for that legacy path, the faster you get to natural history, the sort of better jump start you have in that game.
Yeah. I think, however, we're ready to move on to another save.
Yeah, you want to hop into save too?
Sounds
All
good.
right, let's do it. But before that, we actually have another first look for you guys. So here is that one for Ben Franklin.
Strategy is not idle amusement.
From humble printer to founding father, Benjamin Franklin made everlasting contributions to science and revolutionary U.S. politics. Leaders who follow Franklin's tireless work ethic will find a friend, so long as your politics align. Franklin's curious and industrious nature offers incredible bonuses towards science and growth. And his reputation as a socialite extends to Franklin's outgoing diplomatic practice. Juggle friendly conversations for kind rewards. Consider pairing Franklin with America in the modern age for wild resource bonuses, so long as you claim them first. Or choose a different path all your own. But whatever you build, remember to build something you believe in.
So that was our second first look at the stream for Benjamin Franklin. I know we've teased him that was our first time kind of showing off some of the cool abilities, and we're going to show it off in gameplay too. But let me just first ask, why Ben Franklin to Civ 7?
Well, we are really going on an East Coast tour this year. We have the local hero for the sort of Baltimore, Maryland region we showed before. We're going up the road just a little ways to Philadelphia, and there is nobody more beloved in the city of Philadelphia than Benjamin Franklin. So if you look at his accomplishments, it's just amazing. He was a diplomat. He was a politician who was in the Continental Congress. He was an inventor. He was a scientist. He was the first Postmaster General of the United States. The list goes on and on and on. The cool fact that I just picked up reading about him a little bit last night is that really shows his diplomatic impact is he's the only person to have signed probably the 4 most important documents that were part of the founding of America. So he signed the Declaration of Independence. He signed the treaty with France that brought them into the war. He signed the Treaty of Paris that ended the war and where Britain accepted American independence. And then he signed the U.S. Constitution. He was the oldest member of the delegation still at the U.S. Constitution. So he was just...
He had lived 10 lives.
He lived 10 lives, had his hand in everything. I mean, we've had great leaders of America before. We've had Jefferson, we've had Washington. But you can put a very good argument together that Franklin had as much of an impact as any one of them. So now he gets to be a leader in Civ. And what's cool is he's so good at 2 different parts of a Civ game. He's great at the diplomacy, but he's great at the science. And we've had him overtuned on the science side of things. The dev team has shake their fist at Ben Franklin like, I was going great in this game, but Ben Franklin's science abilities rolled over me. So we've had to actually pull back some of his abilities a little bit, but we'll let Carl dive in and show us exactly what the cool abilities we have associated with him are.
So Ben Franklin has the first American, which is sort of the title that he's referred to as, and he gets science on production buildings, and then he builds production buildings faster. So you really want to pump out as many production buildings as possible with Ben Franklin, and then that equals science. So by doing something you're probably going to be doing anyway, he just gets even stronger. And then he also has really unique interactions with the diplomacy system, which we'll show off here in a moment. He gets science from active endeavors, not sanctions, just endeavors, and not espionage, that he has started himself or that he has chosen to support. And recall that it costs influence in order to support somebody else's endeavor that they propose to you, but if he does that, he gets science from doing so. And then he can also have 2 endeavors of the same type active at a time. And normally you can only have 1. So if I were to do, let's just go ahead and dive right into that. So we're very friendly with Ashoka here. So we're going to do an endeavor with them. And oh, we already have some active. That's why. So we have a research collaboration up right now. So if we switch over to Confucius, we can create another one. So normally you can only have one of these up at a single time. Now, if Confucius were to propose an endeavor with us, we can have that same type active with somebody else. We're able to have them available because we've opted into somebody else's, and we can have one of our own. But Ben Franklin can have 2 of the same that he has proposed to other players. So by selecting this here, we get that as well.
And unlike our last live stream, we are much friendlier with Confucius this time.
Yes.
We are, but one thing we didn't really talk about earlier is we talked a little bit about how the tech tree is set up. We touched on the Civic tree and started diving into the beginning of it with the natural history Civic, but there's a really important Civic early in that tree that we might want to look at right now because it's going to set the stage for everything we're talking about in this save. And that's the political theory Civic. You can see everything channels into it. You've got to go through that political theory Civic. And once you have finished it, it's going to unlock 3 culture branch trees. They're called the ideology trees. It's a democracy tree, a fascism tree, and a communism tree. So every leader at some point will get through political theory, and then they will choose one of those trees to start researching. As soon as you put 1 turn of research into those trees, you have locked into that ideology, and that's going to be, you know, the political thinking, the block that you're following for the rest of the game. In our current game, our good friend Ashoka has chosen democracy just like we have. We've already finished democracy. We're working on liberalism, or can work on liberalism here soon. But the other leaders in this game, only one of them has picked an ideology. That's Xerxes. And
pal Xerxes.
Yeah, Xerxes is a communist right now. And as an American Democrat, you know, we're going to question that at this point in time in history. And so we're going to go and figure out what we need to do to combat Xerxes in just a few moments here.
And we will show that off, but quick question from Great Knight J. How does the ideology democracy differ from governments?
So we have had our research team who has a bunch of historians on board sort of talk about the fact that you know, governments and democracies can be kind of looked at in 2 different ways, and we have actually split apart democracy from a government type this time. Now the government types, do you want to show which government we chose here? We chose authoritarianism in the previous save. We're in a bureaucratic monarchy here. This is another one of the choices. So, you know, a bureaucratic monarchy could be following democratic ideology. It could be following a fascist one. You know, these different governments can be linked to the different ideologies. They're not a strict tie like there had been in some of our previous games.
Got it.
So let's go ahead and start taking a look at our map here. We can see that we have a bunch of different city names from across several cultures. You want to talk about what got us to this point?
So this is a different save game. It's not the one that we were playing before I was talking about, starting as Egypt. We have chosen sort of more of a traditional Western civilization path to America. This game was played by Sean Wilson, who everyone's been seeing on our shorts, and he set it up that we're going to go with the Greek to Norman to American pathway through history, following that with Ben Franklin. So you can see Athens is on a lake here. It's a huge city with all sorts of world wonders established for it. And you can see that there's an Acropolis from our Greek heritage, which is their unique quarter where we put two buildings together. Just 2 tiles west of that, we have the dungeon unique quarter from the Normans, which is Amati and Bailey combined together. I love the moat that goes around it. It's just like, that's got to be
really
my
cool.
favorite unique quarter. But we've got all these world wonders sprinkled around here too. We've got the Colosseum, we've got the Oracle, the pyramids are in the background. It's just all right here in Athens. That's not where we've kept our capital. Sean moved it to the east, further out towards the ocean to get ready for the exploration age. So the city of Rouen is here at the where the river spills out into the ocean, and that was where his Norman capital was. All sorts of great tiles there. We'll see in a second that he's got a lot of specialists down on those tiles because he was going for the Enlightenment victory path there. A few more wonders. We can see Angkor Wat. We can see yet another Mahdi and Bailey complex. So Sean's done some great work here in setting up some amazing cities. The other thing I like to point out is how diverse our city name set has become. So we have the Greek city names, we have some Norman city names. If Carl goes to the southwest, he can see some of the brand new cities that we have established as America. And so you can see this sort of multicultural, layered identity that has built up over the ages, and that's what we're getting. It's very unique to our playthrough. It's not the same as like everyone's America playthrough. Doesn't look the same with the same set of cities. And I think it's really reflective of what you see in the United States right now in our day and age. We have a lot of English city names in the northeast of our country, but if you go to the Mississippi River area, there are French city names, New Orleans, St. Louis. If you go out to the southwest, there are Spanish city names with Los Angeles, San Francisco. There are Native American city names. Chicago is a Native American city name. It's one of the 3 largest cities in the U.S. So,
a wise man once said history is built in layers. So I think that is really evident here.
So I love when that shows through in our game, and that's what we're seeing just with the city names.
It's awesome.
Speaking of things in layers, let's go ahead and choose production for our capital here. So we have a bunch of buildings to choose from, but a few of them really have very high yields, and that's because we're seeing specialist yields also reflected here. This is the highest projected yield that building can get. And we're going to build a cannery, which has a massive 21 food here, and that would be
like to be like where the fishing boats are coming in, and so it likes to be near water. A lot of buildings like to be near water. We should remind players that there pretty much are 3 main types of adjacency bonuses in Civ 7. One of them is for coast and navigable river tiles. You see that especially with the commercial buildings, but you'll also see it with some buildings like the cannery. We have adjacencies for being next to resources, which is especially useful for scientific discovery in Civ 7. And then we have adjacencies for being next to mountains and natural wonders. So this is a case where we have had those 4 water tiles next to this one tile for 3 ages now.
Yeah.
We've really invested in it, and we've been putting as many specialists as we can on that tile.
And a question from Chad, are you able to destroy, move your own districts in Civ 7?
You overbuild.
yes.
So you take buildings that are obsolete from previous ages and you build the newest, latest, and greatest buildings on top. So to some extent you are moving things around. And here the cannery is giving us food out of this tile,
Right.
whereas before we were replacing the guild hall, that was giving us gold from the tile.
right.
So we were moving like what types of yields we're getting and so forth, but we're not actually picking buildings up and moving them.
And we are getting some yield from the guild hall still. It's a minimal amount. It has been reduced, but we are still getting something there. And we could choose to put the cannery on a different tile, and that would create a brand new urban district. So in a way, you can move them like that and continue to keep some of your previous buildings, but obviously the
Those
21
yields, though.
yeah, the yields are much better because of the specialists, and the specialists are not helping the guild hall at all because its adjacency bonuses are gone. So by replacing the guild hall with a cannery, we're gonna get a lot more yield than if we were to put it down here.
I just noticed it's a Casbah across the river,
Right.
which is not part of a Greek, Norman, American heritage, but remember when you can pick up city-state allies they might have that type of unique improvement available to us. So that's what Sean's done to have a southern part of this city that is rocking the Casbah here.
So let's go ahead and place this cannery down. And that's given us a narrative choice similar to what happened in our previous save. This one is a little bit more immediate though. So when we take the old guild hall down to its foundations, we stumble across an older market. So this is looking back all the way to antiquity.
Right, so the market is the big economic building, the first one you encounter in antiquity. Sean was placing down the market in a very smart location with all those water bonuses. So he put it down there. Somewhere in the Renaissance period, the people here said this market's not really serving us. We now have guilds, and guilds are where the economic power of our nation is coming forth. And so we're going to replace this older market with a guild hall. And so the market was overbuilt. And now it's very cool. Here in the modern age, we're taking out the guild hall, getting ready for the cannery, and lo and behold, our archaeologists have found something. And so we're going to go ahead and take the artifacts that are coming from sort of the previous history of the tile, and that's going to help us on our cultural legacy path.
So the next thing we have here is command units. We've got a couple of units right in the middle of our empire ready to go. We're going to move them over to a different city through one of our modern features, railroads, which I know everyone has been very excited to see.
A lot of people have been waiting for railroads.
So let's talk about how industrialization happens.
Sure.
So the first thing that you get to is the railroad, and you get to place down rail stations. And once you have a city with rail stations, then it becomes eligible for the factories that we were talking about earlier. So Carl's going to demonstrate the power of railroads here in a minute.
Yep.
But we'll also very soon get into the power of factories and showing exactly how that works.
Yes. So here we have a rail station, and this is the core building that railroads are centered around. So a rail station is a full hex building. This is a new thing for the modern age. And that's because it is a very important tile. We really want the player to be able to find it easily and focus on it. And there's also a lot of things that are happening on that tile, so it's very important. So this is the only building that can go onto this tile. You can't pair it with another building like we see in other places. But once you have built a rail station, that is only half of the equation. You then have to build a second rail station. You have to have a destination and as well as a start point. Once you have done that, and you have your two rail stations up, it creates a rail connection between the two. Any route, so a road between the two settlements, because it can be a town as well as a city, are instantly upgraded to rail. We can see that there is a road here through this beautiful mountain pass, by the way. This is absolutely gorgeous. That means that even though there's a rail station here, whatever this is going to does not have a rail station. It has not been upgraded. So that is a foreign settlement. If they were to build a rail station, this would be upgraded. But until that happens, that stays a road. But we can see that we have rails in our other settlements, beautiful network of rails running through all of our farmland out here, and that is connecting all of our settlements together, allowing us to then transport units. So we can zoom back in, and we have a couple of our unique units. This is the American Marine, which is sitting in a duck boat because it's an amphibious unit that can be in water as well as on land. And it has a unique action called Move by Rail.
Right. Not unique action, it's a action
contextual,
contextually
action.
Unique for it
because it is adjacent to this rail station. So any unit that is on the rail station or adjacent to the rail station gets this Move by Rail option. And if I click it, let me zoom out, we can see that there are other rail stations that we can teleport to. This instantly moves the unit from that settlement to the one that we are going to. And we want to move these over here to Chicago. And if we click that tile, it instantly teleports the unit traveling by rail across our continent.
There is a 20 tile, I believe it is, limit to the rail transfer in this particular age. So it's not people wonder, can I do all the way across the map? You might have to do across the map in a couple different
You
stages.
might have to chain a few together,
Yeah,
right?
do it over a couple turns.
And sort of while we're moving these units over, we've had a few people in chat asking about tutorials, guides. I know it can seem like there's a lot to take in with all the different mechanics that come in. And I can answer at least part of that. We do have some guides planned. We're working really closely to create some starter guides that are going to help new players to the game and even some returning players get used to some of the new things coming to 7. Is there anything else you guys want to add on top of that?
So we have worked harder on our tutorial system in-game than we ever have in a previous title. We sort of have brushed past it entirely in the live streams because we sort of like to explain things ourselves and don't want people to have to read through the text that
Right.
pops up. But the tutorial system that has been put into Civ 7 is entirely contextual to your gameplay. So it's not like you have to read through these screens to get to the next turn. It's play the game, and our system will kind of listen to what's happening in your game and pop up dialogues to explain what you need to know at just the right time. The other thing that I play with all the time, and we do have on during this stream, is there are 4 advisors that help the player through the game, and those advisors are always looking at your game sort of in the background as well and making sure you're not making a big mistake or misstep. So we have a system called the Advisor Warning System, and every time you might be getting into trouble with something, your advisor will kind of knock on your window and say, wait a second, don't forget to take this into account. So for instance, in your antiquity game, the first time you go to war, you might not remember to take your influence and spend it to add to your war support to keep you from war weariness.
We have a lot of influence right now, so that'll probably be coming soon.
Yeah, and so your advisor is happy to pop up and say, don't forget to put your influence into war support, otherwise your people are not going to want to fight this war for long.
Right. And speaking of war, us and Xerxes right now are not looking great.
We are not, and that's actually why I've been moving these units over here to Chicago, because we're going to get ready to declare war on Xerxes since he is an opposing ideology. So in a moment we'll go ahead and declare that war. I did also just use a prospector unit to acquire a factory resource, and we now have resource assignments available, so let's go ahead and jump in to take a look at factory resources.
Okay, and I think it was a town down
Right here.
Yep, where the quinine resource was acquired. Resources always look to see whether or not they can be used by the local town. If they can, when you acquire them, just get instantly slotted in. If they can't be used locally, then they go over to the left-hand side of this screen where you have to decide where to allocate it. But that one was available to be slotted in immediately, so it did so automatically. And we can see that we have the factory symbol to the right of it, so that one is being processed. Down here in Athens, we have a factory that's really humming. It is processing clay, or the special kaolin clay that's used for porcelain making. And we have 4 copies of that there.
Yeah.
So we are pumping that out. Each copy, it says, is giving us 3% additional culture. So that factory as a whole is giving us a 12% boost to our culture empire-wide, which is certainly very, very useful. The other factory resources, we can mouse over them, and you can see that fish help the growth rate of your of all your settlements, and citrus is a production bonus towards naval units, sort of reflecting how citrus has been used to fight off scurvy for sailors for a long time. So those are some examples of the factory resources, and don't forget that those factory resources, now that we have them slotted into play, they're helping us with that Railroad Tycoon legacy path, so we're getting points towards finishing that legacy path.
It's also worth noting, we've got this bonus towards naval units, but when you do build a rail station and connect a city by rail, it also gives that settlement a 10% boost in training units. So there's an additional immediate yield effect. Of course, the building itself has yield, but you get 10% towards building units, and some of our other resources are also contingent on having a rail connection. So like furs, for example, you get additional happiness if the city has a rail station. If it does not, it's halved.
And does America have a particular bonus to resources? Is there something about the America Civ?
So they get gold every single time they improve a resource. So by using the prospector here, I was able to get gold for doing that. And then the prospector itself lets you claim resources outside of the normal range. So this resource here was more than 3 tiles away from both settlements. It was halfway between them. So I was able to pick that up even though normally I wouldn't, and with any other Civ I would not be able to grab that.
That's a really good question, though, Sarah, because we have not talked about the unique quarter for America.
Right, the
and
industrial
we
park.
almost showed it off, but we kind of failed to dive deep into it. But it was sitting right next to that first rail station that Carl was
So
showing
right
us.
here is the industrial park, and America gets a rail yard and steel mill, unique buildings that, when combined together, make this industrial park. This is not does not create railroads on its own. You do still have to have that rail station, but it sort of ties into that and gets some really amazing production bonuses when you
Look at the yields there, Charles.
build. Yeah, it's huge.
They're ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Well, we do have a lot of specialists on this tile as well. So we're getting a lot of science and a lot of culture from our specialists, and then those are boosting the production bonuses that the industrial park is giving us. So
We should
really
remind
amazing
people
bonuses here.
That there are a lot of wonders that Sean has sprinkled around these cities for us, and wonders are also great ways to accelerate your adjacency bonuses. So the yields in general are super, super strong. We may actually even want to turn on yields and look at them.
Let's do that. Thank you for the reminder. I'm going to skip turn there. So if we turn on our yields, we can see, when we zoom in on the city here, we can see that the yields on each of these tiles, and this doesn't even have the cannery finish. That's going to go up by 21 here in a minute. But the yields on all these tiles are really, really high. This is within our city, and we do have specialists on these tiles, so that's what's boosting that there. But even out here in our countryside, all of our tile improvements have some really, really high yields. And this just goes to show that you can do some pretty awesome gameplay with the terrain and the yield stacks that we know that people really, really like.
And kudos to our game balancing team, because these numbers kind of have escalated in a crazy fashion.
Yes.
And some of our designers, Tim Fleming, has been the lead on that pacing effort. And so he definitely had some tricky problems to work through to try to get the pacing right. But we have everything playing out at the a pace that is appropriate for what we wanted to do, and so we're super happy about all that.
I know that we have gone into yields. We've shown a little bit of the ships in the water too. But before we move on from railroads, I have two quick questions on it. One from Habbo: can enemies use your rails?
If you have open borders, you should be able to teleport to their rail stations, I believe.
I'm not sure about that. I don't think that works.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking
but
it does. Like,
if
you're
you
allied,
capture those cities,
you certainly can. Yes,
then
absolutely.
it becomes your city, and
Absolutely.
you'll be able to use it. So it's not like, I mean, in the real world, there were things like the Soviet Union used a different gauge of railroad than Western Europe did, and so when you marched into Russia, you couldn't use the rail lines and things like that. So they're not those types of problems in our game. If you capture cities, you can build your rail network.
Railroads are your own,
Yes.
essentially.
Yes.
And then the other question I have from Aocash: does building railroads benefit trade, or is it just for military transport?
It benefits trade in that if you look at the whole trade resource factory system as one system, you have to have railroad connections back to your capital to be able to build a factory. You have to have a factory in place in order to take those factory resources and place them in the slots and then start getting the benefits of it. So it's an integral part of your sort of internal network that fosters trade and resources and all the whole railroad tycoon victory path.
And then, as we saw, the rail station is also required to get the most out of certain resources, that they effectively double the amount of yield that they give in a settlement with a rail station, which is really, really significant. And while that's not directly tied to the rail connection from one city to another, having the rail station there multiple times will, by default, create that rail network. So I think we're ready to go back up here. I jumped the gun and went up here. We can see we have some really cool ships and an aircraft carrier. So let's talk about naval and flight in the modern age.
What are you going to do with those cool ships and aircraft carriers?
Like we said over with Chicago, we're prepping to declare war here, and I think we're just about ready to do so. But before we actually declare war, I want to talk about the aircraft carrier, and over here we have an air base of sorts. So we've hinted that there is a third type of commander in the modern age, and that is the squadron commander. So here is a squadron commander, and the squadron commander is actually sort of divided up into two categories. There is a land version, which is squadron commander. It must be on land. It always must be on land. You can pack it into into a fleet commander and move it around, but you do have to base it on land. If you want something in the water, it has to be an aircraft carrier, which is a distinct type from the squadron commander. It's not an embarked squadron commander. This is a naval unit. It cannot go up on land at all, but it is still a squadron commander of its own type.
Can we like zoom in on the carrier too? It's
Absolutely.
Such a cool unit.
Yeah, so here we go. This is the aircraft carrier. And then I'll bring us over here and we'll take a look at this airbase as well.
And remember that the American unique military unit was the Marine that we
Yes.
showed on land before, and now we're seeing the naval version of it.
Yeah, so it does
With the
not
embark.
have a separate embarked unit asset like a lot of our units do. It just is the duck boat that goes into the water. I think it gets this awning in the back to help keep out the ocean spray. But yeah, this is just the same unit. It just goes in water, and when we attack this city up here, we'll see when it pops out, it just drives right up onto the land. It's very cool.
Should we test out an attack?
Yeah, let's go ahead and declare war. So we're ready to declare war. We're
So
already
we have
hostile.
a negative 90 relationship. You can see that with Xerxes up on the second line there,
Right.
where we have the red 90 in the
Woof.
heart.
Right here.
So yeah, his relationship with us has soured.
It has. So because we are already hostile, we get the option for a formal war. If we were higher relationship, it would be a surprise war, which causes free war support for them. Here, because it's a formal war, he does not get bonus war support. We are getting a bonus war support from our military attributes, which we have unlocked. We'll go ahead and declare this.
So, question from chat. I know there's a lot of interest in how the AI is going to take advantage of some of these mechanics too. Smite-meister asks, will the AI actually build and use airplanes in Civ 7?
Yes.
So absolutely. One thing that the AI doesn't have to worry about quite as much as in previous titles is it doesn't have to like build up the tech tree basis quite as much to going into modern. Everyone starts at the bottom of the tree with obviously some boosts from the legacy paths and scientific attributes you've earned, but it doesn't have as far to get into the aircraft research as maybe it did in previous games. So people will see AI use of aircraft, absolutely.
I know, I almost wish we could have seen that first save you had and getting absolutely destroyed by the AI.
Wasn't that much fun.
Right, maybe not for the one player.
It was a nice redemption arc for me, but
yeah. Of course.
So I'm dumping a bunch of our unspent influence into war support. So we are getting a +7 support now, which will give us big combat strength bonuses, 7 combat strength over Xerxes, and cause him happiness penalties, which then results in yield penalties in his settlements.
Now he may have a bank of
He may be
influence
spending some here
that
in a
he'll
moment,
spend
yeah, when it gets to his turn. I am saving some of it. We've got 400 or so influence left, and that's to be able to respond to other events that pop up if somebody proposes an endeavor we want to support or a sanction we want to reject.
You also find that if Xerxes has an ally somewhere else in the game, it's often a case where one war can have a chain effect and lead to a couple other people declaring war. So it's always good to sort of be cautious with spending all your influence at once.
So we're going to start by moving in our fleet commander, who's packed up with a bunch of different units. Let's talk a little bit about those before we get back to our air
So before
units.
you talk about that, just what Carl just did was the first move was with the naval commander,
Yes.
with the units still packed. They went one tile to the northwest. Then he was ready to get them into battle formation, so he immediately unpacked. And just like on land, the naval units work the same way. He's got them all spread out. And because the naval commander has the right promotion, they can immediately move and attack.
Yep, this one right here allows us to move immediately after unpacking, so those units are already ready to go. So what we have here are two different types of naval units. We have a battleship, mouse over that, battleship, and we have a destroyer. These are a heavy naval unit and a light naval unit. In modern, we start introducing additional types, classes of units, light and heavy. Heavy units are bigger, cost more, and have more combat strength. Light units are faster, smaller, lower combat strength, lower production cost.
And we do have a really cool dev diary actually coming out tomorrow that's going to dive into combat, a lot of the mechanics that we're seeing here. So there's a lot more to explain there too.
And Carl, we keep having this fighter plane come through our screen, and what's that all about?
So this is on the aircraft carrier. This is a fighter who's on patrol. If we select our aircraft carrier, we can see that the units are packed into it. And air units are always packed into a commander. When you have a squadron commander, or when you have an aircraft, it is either in a squadron commander or in the aerodrome itself, which has a sort of commander-esque ability to it. And they can never just deploy out onto the map. But when you have a fighter unit in that location, and we have one up here in our squadron commander airbase as well, it is immediately on patrol. That is an anti-air unit. So if other aircraft come into range, it will intercept them, which is traditional
so
for
other players
Civ.
can see, oh, he has fighters up.
Right. Then we also have some bombers here, which are really good at attacking cities, which we're going to use here in just a moment. And then we have another aircraft type, which is new to Civilization 7. We have ground attack aircraft, in this case a dive bomber. So this unit is really good at attacking other units.
I'm really excited about those.
Absolutely. It's the bomber we wanted to specialize in more of an anti-city role, anti-defense role, particularly because capturing cities now, really big, well-defended cities means lots of districts that you have to attack, so the bomber's really good at doing that, where the dive bomber, the ground attack aircraft, is particularly adept at attacking other units. So we'll go ahead and select that.
And while you do that, I do have an aircraft question from Buffalo Error. He says, does it mean that we can deploy aircraft on missions as in previous games?
You cannot deploy them out onto the map to do a patrol. They patrol where they are. So if you have a squadron commander or an aerodrome or an aircraft carrier, they patrol that location. You are able to move those units around. So there we have our attack.
Oh, the poor scout.
The poor scout. So we can rebase this squadron commander someplace else. So I can take this squadron commander and I can say, this is the rebase action. There are no locations for me to currently rebase it to. Once it goes back to a location, I can then deploy it back out onto the map. But if we had an eligible location, we could move it around and then redeploy the squadron
commander. They have to be,
commander.
I believe, on flat terrain without vegetation
yep.
in friendly territory.
Right. So there are rules for where they can go, but once they're deployed, that unit will patrol that area. So you deploy the squadron commander and create an air base rather than deploying the aircraft itself.
So we just looked at the fleet commander promotions, but the squadron commanders, they have promotions as well, right?
They do, yes. So the squadron commander has a promotion tree that's a little bit smaller with fewer promotions on each tree, and that's because it's modern age only. So each commander has a little bit less that it has to worry about because it's around for less time, just one age in this squadron commander case. So we have dogfighting, which is all about anti-air, raids, which is about your bombers and ground attackers, logistics, which is standard for some of the other commanders, a lot of movement-based promotions there. And then airlift operations is really, really cool. It unlocks the ability for land units, infantry, to pack into this commander, and then you can paradrop them out onto the map. And then eventually you get the same thing for cavalry units, so you can deploy your tanks out onto the map. And then in the middle here, we have a cargo drop that allows you to do a area heal at range. So this is pretty amazing and can really turn the tide of a battle. So squadron commanders, super important. You want to have them and do air combat with them so you can get these promotions and then use that to most efficiency.
Points. I don't know if we've explained exactly how they work in any of the streams, but
Right.
how do you get to the commendation points down at the bottom?
So to get a commendation, you have to reach the bottom of a promotion tree. So if I were to unlock this promotion, and this promotion, I would get a commendation point that I can then spend on these at the bottom. I don't have to get every promotion in a tree. I can if I want to, but to get a commendation point, you just have to reach the bottom of a tree. And then I get that commendation point, and I can spend it on any of these commendations here.
But I'd have to get to the bottom of a second tree
in order to get an additional commendation. Yep, exactly. Now this is a little bit different than our aircraft carrier because aircraft carriers do not have airlift operations. It actually has a contextually different promotion tree, which we will look at here in just a moment after we start our bombing on this city. We're going to go ahead and do a carpet bomb, which is a group order to command all bombers in this aircraft carrier to attack the city.
27 damage on the first run. 53 on the second
Wow,
one.
it's powerful.
Yes, it is.
And I love that because in so many of our previous games, to try to queue up 2 or 3 bomber attacks in a row was click, 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 and now Carl just did it with 1 click. And if he'd had 4 bombers there, they would have all 4 gone.
All
in.
gone. Yep.
Between that and the unpacking, the commanders are a really nice addition to the game.
They're super fun, and they make things more streamlined. You know, it's you spend more time making the decisions and playing the game and not worrying about where you're clicking.
Right.
So we've destroyed the district defenses, and there's no defending units, so I don't actually have a target to attack with our naval unit here. But if they move something up, then we'll do some naval combat as well.
A question from chat, can we use fighters to gain visibility over large parts of the ocean, or will we have to use naval units if we want visibility?
Aircraft by themselves have a farther line of sight because they're elevated, so they do give you quite a bit of visibility distance, and you can attack something that's in range that's still like very far away. So like, I don't know that the fighter will have the range here. Bombers, I think, have a longer one. Yeah, so I can attack all the way up here.
Wow.
I don't have direct visibility on this tile, but it's within range. So I can, let's go ahead and we'll just attack here. Yep.
And how's the other front of our 2-front war looking?
Yeah, let's go ahead and attack over from Chicago.
This one's not looking good for Xerxes. I mean, the other one wasn't either, but...
We might have had a bad relationship, but I think we caught him by surprise, perhaps.
Yeah. Getting your Marines down into the Navigable River.
Another question from chat, are there specific bonuses to heavy or light units, and can you specialize?
So heavy units have higher combat strength, slower movement, higher production cost. Light units have lower production cost, lower combat strength, but additional movement. There are only certain places where this appears. Naval is the primary example of that. So if you want a fast, nimble, cheap naval fleet, you want to go light. If you do not mind the longer production times and slower movement, then battleships are far and away the right ship for you.
But I don't think I think to answer that specific question, I don't think there's like an ability that's just with this particular leader,
Right.
their light units
Right.
are better. This late in the game is when we felt the real need to split it out into those separate troop lines. We don't have that sort of throughout the rest of the game, so we haven't really
We wanted to
explored
focus
that.
on it more with the World War period.
Right.
We did earn a promotion on our aircraft carrier, so now we can take a look at that alternative promotion tree, which is carrier operations. This makes the carrier more powerful and is different from the airdrop one. We can't pack land units into the aircraft carrier.
So you might be wondering also, like, what happens to my air units if I just build them back home and I'm trying to build up my collection of air units and then I'm going to get a carrier online and deploy them there? So we do, in this save back near our capital city, have a aerodrome, and Carl's going to bring that up in a
Let
second.
me teleport this unit over
Okay.
so it unselects. And that was worth noting, that was an entirely packed commander that I moved with the move by
2
rail.
Marines and 2 artillery units, it looked like.
I believe that's an AT gun range unit and an artillery.
Yeah, all moved up to 20 hexes.
Yeah.
That was close to 20 units. It was probably 15 hexes, all with that one operation by rail. Yeah, so combine commanders with rail units. Some of our fans who love railroads, and I know Ursa Ryan's out there.
I hope he's watching.
He
right
better
now.
be paying attention because we showed a lot of rail movement there in just one or 2 clicks.
So here's our aerodrome.
Okay, so if we click on that, we can see that to some extent it is also set up like the squadron commander was.
It even
where
has promotions.
It has slots.
It just is missing that extra contextual tree, which we want to encourage you to build squadron commanders and deploy them. So this is a little bit of a weaker version, but it's not completely...
It's built into this full tile building, though.
This
Just like the
can't move.
rail station we were talking about before, it's a full tile building
Yep.
in the modern age, built into your city. That's where you're going to be producing your aircraft and then sending them off to wherever you need to send them off. But in this particular case, it looks like we also have a fighter patrolling, making sure our capital is safe.
And here we can see some beautiful railroad gates as the railroad enters our city.
Yeah, that is the level of detail as you zoom in is
Yeah.
really awesome.
Yeah.
Should we progress a couple of turns and kind of see?
Yeah, we want to go ahead and try to take this.
We also want to tell you what the point of this attack on Xerxes is, so we'll need to talk about our military legacy path here in a second as well.
We have so many planes to use.
Yeah, maybe, Carl, we could just hop into those legacy paths too and check
Sure.
it out.
So we talked before about how Xerxes is following a different ideology than we are. So let's go to the military legacy path, and we'll see that this is called what we call the ideology legacy path. And you gain points on this legacy path by conquering foreign settlements. They can be ones that, maybe there's been a war where you've lost a couple settlements and you have to take them back. That counts for you. So if you think about the historical World War II, the Allies didn't conquer a lot of things permanently. A lot of it was taking back stuff that they had lost to their opponents. All this type of success in combat helps you in this legacy path. But you get moved further down this legacy path if you are fighting those wars against your ideological opponents.
Yep.
So it's 1 point for each settlement you conquer before you even have an ideology, 2 points if you have an ideology but you're not fighting one of your ideological opponents, and then 3 points per conquest when you conquer a city against one of your ideological opponents.
Which we are about to do.
Yes, you're about to score a couple of these, I think.
I think so, yeah.
You might get 6 in a hurry here.
Yeah.
And so the 20 points, might seem like it's a hefty thing to do, but it's achievable.
Yep. Right.
And then while we're here, do we want to look at science?
Yep. So we have a fourth legacy path, and that is in modern age called space race. So Civ has traditionally always had a science victory that was a rocket ship blasting off into space and showing the forward progress and momentum of humankind, being able to start thinking about getting out in space and colonizing the stars. And so Civ 7 is no different. We have a number of projects that are all related to flight. And so you'll see there's a transoceanic flight project, which is the first milestone along that path that's mentioned here by the advisor. So since we've already built the aerodrome, we actually could go ahead and start working on that at this point right now. But once you have all 3 of those space race projects completed, then you are eligible to finish this legacy path with a victory. So we'll talk about victories just at the very end here, but we've kind of set up how you get to them in all 4 cases now.
Right. And a question from Grey Knight J, are there multiple ways to approach each victory type? For instance, is the culture victory winnable with means other than archaeology?
So you're going to have to use archaeology to set it up. But one thing that's really important that this question alludes to is it's your progress through all 3 ages that helps you towards these victory types. So at the end of each victory, and we'll just go into it now because it's relevant to the text. At the end of each of the legacy paths, you unlock the victory. And what we've always thought about is how best does a Civ game end? And we've thought about Civ games throughout the entire history of the franchise, and it's always something really cool, really special, really momentous that you do that triggers the victory. That always feels the best. So whether it was blasting that rocket off into space or winning a military victory by conquering that last capital, something like that always felt good as the way to culminate your victory. And so what our design team has done, and I applaud the folks who worked on this because it was a really cool solution, is we're racking up all these legacy points, but we didn't want it to be just a victory based on a score. We wanted the player to get a chance to feel that great sense of accomplishment. So at the end of every legacy path, you unlock a victory, and a victory is always sort of a special project you have to undertake to get that dramatic moment, and that will be a sudden death victory once you achieve that. So we're going to have a whole designer diary coming up in around the time of launch, I think it is.
Yep.
That's going to go into victories in a lot of detail. But one good example of that is when you finish the cultural path, that's going to unlock the World's Fair project, and you can start working on building the World's Fair. But how long does that take? It actually, it's a pretty hefty project. It takes a while, but every legacy point that you've earned towards culture in any of the ages is going to speed that up. So if you've been a culture player all along, you're just going to be able to push over that final finish line a little bit faster than the players like just made a last-minute switch into culture.
Right.
And all the legacy paths are set up that way. We looked at the ideology one, and that one you're building Operation Ivy, which is going to get you nuclear capabilities. And we're not going to show nukes right here, but there is the presence of nuclear technology in our game here. And Operation Ivy is sort of the way to show that you are, that's historically where they evolved from the atomic weaponry of the Manhattan Project up to thermonuclear. And so that's sort of saying that you're the dominant military power and you've won that victory.
Got it. And as you mentioned, we are going to have a developer diary on the topic, so we'll be diving into more detail with that. But I do have a question. What happens if the third age finishes before anyone gets a victory condition?
So that is something that we thought about, something that can happen, and this will actually happen to you. The same type of system kicks in if you are playing a single age game. So for instance, I'm just playing an antiquity game. Then the victories, which we've shown, which are only present here in the modern age, are not available in those single age games, and it's all about who's accumulated the most legacy points. So there's a tracker on the victory panels that we've been showing that shows legacy points accumulated throughout all the ages, and you just will be able to tell who's going to be the winner
Comes
that
down
way.
to the points then, right?
Yeah, so that then we do end up going to points, and that's been traditional for Civ games, is that there is points being tallied in the background, and if you run out of time, the time limit situation, the time limit victory was always scored like that in the past.
Right. Carl, catch us up. What's been going on?
I'm capturing cities. So we've already taken 2. So if we take a look at our victory progress, we can see we've made a bunch of points here, just like you were saying.
3 points twice.
Yeah, so we're well on our way to capturing Xerxes.
Now, how big an empire does Xerxes have if we were going to try to take him out?
He has 14 more settlements.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
He's
So
spread
we
out
have
quite a
lot.
bit. Yeah.
Yes, he is.
And most of them are on our continent, or does he have them spread out worldwide at this point?
I don't see a lot over here. I don't think he has very many here. It's mostly on this landmass.
Okay.
Well, one more question we have. Are the victories balanced to each other? One problem in Civ 6 is that things like culture would complete way before science victories.
So we like to think they're balanced. We've been spending a lot of time working on the balance, but we know the way, the Civ community digs in and really attacks problems and finds optimal paths through the game. So, balance is something that we're going to continue to look at throughout the lifespan of Civ 7. It's an area where, we're not going to expect to get it perfectly with all the cool little maneuvers that our fans will come up with, taking into account. So it'll be something that we're working on all the time.
We learn from our community.
The one thing that you'll see about these victories is almost all of them translate into sort of a progress track where you have to get a score. And so it's super easy to balance them just by making a few more score required or a few less. So balanceable, absolutely. Perfectly balanced, we'll see.
Right. That is fair. Well, I think just given the breadth of Xerxes' empire, perhaps perhaps we can look to the future and say we could get there, but it might take us quite a bit.
It looks like you're having fun.
I am having fun, yeah.
Well, I think, is there anything else you guys want to touch on, or are we ready to go?
I think we're ready to go.
All right. Well, that was the modern age, and again, just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
We got to show off some cool things with railroads, naval air combat. There is so much to this age, and we can't wait for you to play it. February 11th is coming up so soon. And again, like I said, you could play even earlier, February 6th, if you pre-order the game. And that's day and date on PC and console, cross-play, cross-save, really exciting stuff. Don't forget to follow the Civ socials. We're constantly sending through updates there. We have some new things that are coming out with this live stream, including a first look, as you saw, for Ben Franklin and for Harriet Tubman. We have new game guides for them, a new game guide for America, and as we mentioned before, we have that really awesome dev diary coming out tomorrow on combat. Ed and Carl, thank you so much for being here today.
Most welcome.
Yeah, our pleasure.
It was awesome. I'm gonna play you guys out with our performance last week at the Game Awards. We premiered the main theme of Civilization VII, Live Gloriously, composed by none other than Christopher Tin. Here it is.